They told me I wasn't successful enough to join the family cruise, so I let them board the yacht without knowing it was mine. I waited, then walked up the gangway and said, "It is my yacht, mother." You should have seen their faces. For 7 years I built my company in silence, and this was the moment everything flipped. Want to know how I went from being the family disappointment to owning the ship they stood on? Keep watching. My name is Malene Parker, and at 32 years old, I learned that my family's definition of success didn't include me. I come from a long line of status-obsessed Boston elites who measure worth by bank accounts and job titles. Our annual family cruise was always a celebration of achievements until I received that text from my mother. "This year's cruise is for successful family members only," she wrote, unaware that the luxury yacht they chartered was actually mine. Let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button as I reveal how I showed my family exactly who was successful enough to be on board. Growing up in Brooklyn, one of Boston's wealthiest suburbs, meant living in a world where appearance was everything and emotional connection was optional. Our sprawling colonial home, with its perfectly manicured lawn, was more showcase than sanctuary. The Parker family name carried weight in social circles, but inside those walls warmth was scarce. My father, Charles Parker, built his fortune through ruthless investment banking deals that often left smaller companies gutted. His philosophy was simple: measure a person's worth by their income bracket and professional title. Dinner conversations revolved around stock options and portfolio performance, never personal dreams or feelings. His approval came in the form of slight nods when I brought home perfect report cards, followed quickly by questions about how I could improve further. "Money doesn't just talk, Malene. It commands respect," he would say while straightening his custom-tailored suit. "Those without it are simply background noise in this world." My mother, Vivian, perfected the art of social climbing with surgical precision. Her calendar was filled with charity galas and country club functions where networking was her primary sport. She trained me from childhood to sit with perfect posture, speak with measured words, and always maintain appearances. "A lady never shows weakness in public," she instructed, applying her signature red lipstick, eyes focused on her reflection rather than on me. "And the Parker women are ladies above all else." Sebastian, my older brother by 4 years, absorbed our father's lessons like a devoted disciple. By 36, he had become a carbon copy of Charles, down to the smug smile he wore when discussing his executive position at a prestigious finance firm. His Harvard MBA and corner office were family conversation staples, status weapons he wielded to establish dominance at every gathering. "This deal I closed last week," he would begin, scanning the room to ensure everyone was listening, "brought in 8 figures before lunch on Tuesday." My younger sister Juliet, 29 and picture-perfect, took a different route to family approval. She married Preston Hamilton, heir to a hotel empire, and transformed herself into the ultimate trophy wife. Her Instagram feed showcased vacation homes, designer wardrobes, and elaborate parties that our mother proudly shared with her social circle. "Preston surprised me with another diamond bracelet for our anniversary," she would announce, wrist extended for obligatory admiration. "He says a woman like me deserves only the best." The Parker family's definition of success was carved in stone: Ivy League education, corporate career climbing, prestigious address, and preferably marriage into equal or greater wealth. Anything else was considered failure, or worse, embarrassment. I tried desperately to fit this mold throughout my youth. I attended the right private schools, joined the expected clubs, and eventually enrolled in business school as planned. My internships at blue-chip financial institutions earned temporary nods of approval, particularly from my father, who saw this as following in his footsteps. But something inside me withered with each passing day in those sterile office buildings. The fluorescent lighting seemed to drain not just the color from my skin, but the life from my spirit. Spreadsheets and profit projections left me hollow, while my classmates and colleagues thrived on the competitive energy. By 25, I couldn't maintain the charade any longer. The panic attacks in bathroom stalls between meetings became more frequent. The Sunday night dread began extending backward into weekends until there was no relief. My body was sending signals my mind couldn't ignore. "I'm leaving finance," I announced at a family dinner 7 years ago, my voice steadier than my hands. "I've accepted a position at Harborview Marina." The silence that followed seemed eternal before erupting into predictable responses. "Working at a boat dock? Is this some kind of quarter-life crisis joke?" Sebastian laughed, not bothering to hide his disdain. "Malene, think about what this will look like to everyone," my mother hissed, already calculating the social damage. My father's disappointment manifested as dismissal. "This phase will pass when reality sets in." The first time you need money, you'll be back asking for a reference letter. Only Juliet offered faint support, though her words dripped with condescension. Well, I think it's brave to try something different. Not everyone can handle the pressure of real business, after all. The annual Parker family cruise had been a tradition since I was 12. Every summer, my parents would charter a luxury yacht for a week of Mediterranean or Caribbean sailing. These trips weren't vacations so much as floating stages for family members to perform their success stories. My role on these cruises evolved from obedient child to family disappointment. Even in my late 20s, I was seated at the kids' table during meals alongside teenage cousins and family friends' children. My opinions were politely acknowledged, then swiftly ignored during discussions about politics, business, or property investments. Malene has such unique perspectives, my mother would say with a tight smile before promptly changing the subject. What my family didn't know, what I deliberately kept from them, was that my boat dock job had merely been the first step in a carefully crafted plan. I started at the marina to learn the business from the ground up, observing how luxury yacht charters operated, identifying gaps in service, and building relationships with clients and staff alike. Within 2 years, I used my business degree not for Wall Street, but to develop a plan that secured investors for my first yacht charter purchase. By 30, I had transformed a single boat operation into maritime luxuries, a fleet of high-end vessels catering to elite clients along the eastern seaboard. I kept my success quiet, operating primarily through business managers and representatives. The company grew through reputation and excellence, not the Parker family name. In many ways, that separation was healing. It allowed me to build something truly mine, free from the weight of family judgment. When my company acquired Azure Dream, a stunning 200-foot luxury yacht with every imaginable amenity, it became our flagship vessel. The purchase made waves in industry publications, but remained unknown to my family, who had long since stopped asking about my little boat job. At each family gathering, I endured their condescension with the quiet knowledge that my company now generated more annual revenue than my brother's much-lauded executive position. Each dismissive comment became easier to bear, knowing I had built something meaningful on my own terms. Still playing with boats, Malene? My father would ask at holiday dinners. Something like that, I'd respond, swallowing both pride and the truth. I had waited, hoped, for the right moment to reveal my success. I wanted my family to recognize my worth without the validation of wealth. I wanted them to see me, Malene, the person, not just another achievement to catalog and compare. That foolish hope died with a single text message. The morning had begun like any other Tuesday at Maritime Luxury's headquarters in Boston Harbor. My corner office overlooked the water, with floor-to-ceiling windows framing our vessels bobbing gently in their slips. I was reviewing upcoming charter contracts with my operations director when my phone chimed. I expected another forwarded article about women in business, my mother's way of supporting my career choice, while hinting at improvement. Instead, the words on screen turned my coffee bitter in my mouth. Malene, the family has decided this year's summer cruise will be a celebration of success. Given your continued career choices, we feel it would be uncomfortable for everyone if you attend it. This cruise is for successful family members only. I'm sure you understand. We'll see you at Thanksgiving instead. I read the message 3 times. Each repetition brought a new wave of emotion. First shock, then hurt, then anger, then a hollow disbelief. After 20 years of annual cruises, after enduring countless subtle jabs and condescending remarks, I wasn't even deemed worthy of an invitation. My hands shook as I set down my phone. Isla, my operations director, noticed immediately. Malene, is everything okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I've been uninvited from my family vacation, I said. The words sounded absurd. Apparently, I'm not successful enough to qualify for attendance. Isla's expression shifted from concern to indignation. Your family doesn't know you own one of the most prestigious yacht charter companies on the East Coast? They think I work at a marina. Maybe as a manager by now if I'm lucky. I never corrected them. The admission sounded ridiculous even to me. Call your sister, Isla suggested. There must be some misunderstanding. I nodded, though I already knew there wasn't. Still, I needed to hear the justification firsthand. I waited until Isla left my office, then dialed Juliet's number. Maddie. Hi, my sister answered, her voice coated in artificial brightness, the kind she reserved for uncomfortable conversations. I was going to call you this week. Really? To uninvite me personally instead of letting Mom do it by text. Even I was surprised by the bitterness in my voice. A pause. Oh, she already told you about the cruise. Look, it wasn't my decision, but I do think Mom has a point about the theme this year. The theme being no failures allowed? Don't be dramatic, Malene. It's about appearances. Preston's parents are joining us, along with some of Sebastian's business associates. The conversations will all be about investments and business expansions. You'd feel out of place working at a marina doesn't exactly count as real success. I see. I'm not saying that, she backpedaled quickly, though we both knew she was. It's just a different world. Plus, you know how small the quarters can feel even on luxury yachts. We had to limit numbers, and it made sense to focus on family members with shared interests. Where are you even going this year? I asked, though I already suspected. We've chartered this amazing vessel called Azure Dream for a Bahamas cruise. Apparently, it's the crown jewel of some boutique charter company. Dad pulled strings to get it. It's usually booked years in advance by celebrities and royalty. The irony was almost too perfect. They had chartered my flagship yacht, the very symbol of the success they believed I lacked, to celebrate their superiority without me. Sounds nice, I managed, my mind already racing with implications. It's supposed to be spectacular. 6 staterooms with private bathrooms, a jacuzzi on the sun deck, gourmet chef, the works. Maybe next year you can join again when it's just a regular family trip, right? Next year. I ended the call shortly after, claiming I had a meeting to attend. As soon as Juliet was off the line, the full weight of the exclusion crashed down. Years of seeking approval, of quietly proving myself while hoping for recognition, culminated in this casual dismissal. I closed my office door, sank into my chair, and allowed myself 5 minutes of silent tears, something I hadn't indulged in since leaving the corporate world. A knock came. It was Arden Foster, my best friend since college and now the marketing director at Maritime Luxuries. She entered without waiting. A habit born from years of friendship. Isla told me what happened, she said, closing the door behind her. Your family chartered Azure Dream without knowing it's yours? I nodded, wiping away the last traces of tears. The universe has a twisted sense of humor. Arden's expression shifted, from sympathy to something sharper. This is perfect, actually. I raised an eyebrow. Perfect? Being deemed not successful enough for my own family's standards is perfect. No, she smiled, that gleam in her eye unmistakable, the same one I'd seen light up dozens of successful campaigns. Being able to show up on your own yacht and watch their faces when they realize who really owns it? That's perfect. The thought had already crossed my mind, but I dismissed it as petty. I don't know, Arden. I've kept my success quiet for a reason. I wanted them to value me for me, not for what I've accomplished. She didn't flinch. And how's that working out? Her words hit like cold truth. They've had 7 years to see your worth beyond financial metrics. Instead, they're uninviting you from a family tradition to save face with in-laws and business associates. I swallowed. She was right. I had given my family every opportunity to value my happiness, my passion, my choice. And instead, they had doubled down on a definition of success so narrow, I no longer fit in it at all. What would I even say? I asked, voice low. Surprise! The boat you're standing on belongs to your failure daughter. Arden leaned forward, serious now. You say nothing. Not at first. Show up as the owner, doing a routine check-in with the captain and crew. Let the revelation happen naturally. They need this reality check, Malene. Not just for your sake, but for theirs. The idea took root. Watered by years of dismissal, it began to grow. I picked up my phone and dialed Captain Elias Thornton, an old friend and my most trusted partner. He had been with me since the very beginning and was scheduled to command Azure Dream for the upcoming Parker charter. Captain Miller, I need to discuss the Parker family cruise next week. Yes, the Parker party. 7-day Bahamas charter departing next Thursday. Is there a problem with the arrangements, Miss Parker? No problem, I replied, a plan forming with each word, but there is a situation you should be aware of. The clients are my family and they don't know I own the company. Or the yacht. A pause. I see. And would you prefer we maintain that confidentiality during the charter? Actually, I'll be joining the cruise. Not as a guest, at least not initially, but as the owner conducting a quality check. I'd like the crew briefed accordingly, but no one should inform my family of my position before I arrive. Understood, Miss Parker. When should we expect you? Approximately 2 hours after they've boarded. Let them settle in, get comfortable. I'll arrive before departure. As I ended the call, a strange mixture of anxiety and resolve settled into my chest. For 7 years, I carried the weight of my family's indifference. Maybe it was finally time to set that burden down and stand in the full light of what I had built. You're doing this? Arden asked, watching me. I nodded, straightening my shoulders. I'm doing this. It's time they really saw me for who I am. 7 years earlier, I had stood in the ornate foyer of my parents' home, suitcases packed, resignation letter submitted to the investment firm where I had worked for 3 soul-crushing years. My father's laughter still echoed in my ears from the night before. The maritime industry? Boats? Malene, be serious, he'd scoffed over a crystal tumbler of scotch. What do you know about boats besides riding on them during our vacations? What Charles Parker didn't know was that I had spent 6 months researching the luxury yacht charter industry before making my decision. What he couldn't see were the nights I spent poring over business models and market analyses, while still enduring the suffocation of corporate finance. What he refused to understand was that his daughter had inherited his business acumen, but chosen to apply it to something that brought her joy. My first real step toward independence had been a risk he would have never approved of. I used my trust fund inheritance, the money meant for a down payment on a Beacon Hill townhouse, to purchase a modest 30-foot yacht. I named it First Light. That single vessel became the cornerstone of what would one day grow into maritime luxuries. Those early days tested everything in me. I worked 18-hour days, learning the business, literally from the deck up. Mornings began before sunrise, prepping vessels for clients. Afternoons were spent marketing and networking. Evenings brought cleaning and maintenance, often alongside the handful of crew I could afford. You won't last 3 months, Sebastian had predicted during one particularly tense family dinner. The novelty will wear off when you realize how much work it is to play with boats all day. What my brother failed to grasp was that hard work doesn't feel like sacrifice when you're building something you believe in. Yes, my hands developed calluses unfamiliar to Parker women. Yes, I collapsed into bed each night, utterly drained. But for the first time in my life, I woke up eager to face the day. Now, as I prepared to confront my family aboard Azure Dream, those memories fueled my resolve. The week leading up to the charter became a careful balance of business and personal preparation. And in the quiet of my walk-in closet, I stood before racks of elegant clothes, deliberating over what to wear. I needed an outfit that struck the perfect balance. Polished, effortless, confident. Not flashy, not showy, just unmistakably in control. The kind of presence that doesn't beg for recognition, commands it. Professional enough to command respect, but casual enough to suit a yacht owner checking in on operations. I selected crisp white linen pants, a navy blue silk blouse, and gold accessories that whispered rather than shouted wealth. The ensemble was completed with a pair of Sperry boat shoes, practical, yet perfect for the setting. No power suits, I reminded myself, setting aside the corporate armor I'd once relied on. This isn't about impressing them on their terms anymore. At the office, I met with my executive team to ensure operations would run smoothly during my absence. Maritime Luxury had grown to a team of 40 full-time employees and dozens of contracted crew members across multiple vessels. I'll be accessible by phone for emergencies, I explained to the group gathered in our conference room, but Isla will handle day-to-day decisions while I'm away. Are you sure you want to do this? Asked Natalie from finance, who knew something of my complicated family dynamics. A week trapped on a boat with them after such a revelation could be intense. That's exactly why I need to do it, I replied. We've all been playing roles for too long. It's time for authenticity, whatever the outcome. The meeting with Azure Dream's crew was held via video the day before departure. Captain Miller had already briefed them on the unusual situation, but I wanted to address them personally. This is not about embarrassing anyone, I emphasized to the attentive faces on screen. Treat all guests with our standard excellence. The only difference is that when I arrive, you'll acknowledge me as owner rather than as a family member joining late. Understood, Miss Parker, replied Bianca, our chief stewardess. We'll handle the situation with discretion. The night before the confrontation, I stood before my bathroom mirror, practicing what to say when the moment came. Every scenario I imagined ended differently, from tearful reconciliations to explosive arguments. This is my yacht, I said to my reflection, then shook my head. Too aggressive. What a surprise finding you all here, I tried instead. Too passive. After dozens of failed attempts, I accepted that no script could prepare me for the reality of the moment. That realization brought both anxiety and liberation. A text from Arden lit up my phone. Remember, you built something extraordinary on your own terms. Tomorrow they get to see the real Malene Parker. Sleep well, Captain. Her words grounded me. This wasn't about revenge or even validation. It was about truth. About standing in my identity after years of hiding pieces of myself to preserve a fragile family peace. I packed lightly. Essentials for the week and a few deeply meaningful items. The original business plan for maritime luxury, written in a coffee shop after quitting finance. The keys to First Light, my first yacht. A photo of my team celebrating our 5th anniversary. The morning of departure brought crystalline blue skies and perfect sailing conditions. I drove first to our private marina, where several of our vessels were docked. Azure Dream, however, would be departing from the larger commercial Liberty Harbor Marina, where my family would expect to board a standard chartered vessel. As I parked and stepped out into the familiar scent of salt and diesel, a familiar calm settled over me. The marina had always grounded me. It reminded me of a truth I'd come to hold sacred over the past 7 years. Success isn't defined by others' recognition, but by building a life that aligns with your values and passions. Whether or not my family could accept that remained to be seen, but I was done diminishing my light to fit within their narrow definitions. With that thought firmly in mind, I began the drive to Liberty Harbor Marina, where Azure Dream and my unsuspecting family awaited. I arrived 30 minutes after their scheduled boarding time. Parking in the executive section reserved for yacht owners and management, I took a moment to collect myself. From my vantage point, I saw her Azure Dream majestic at the end of the pier. At 200 feet, she dominated the marina, her sleek white hull gleaming in the afternoon sun. This wasn't just a yacht. It was a testament to every choice, every risk, every night I'd pushed through doubt and exhaustion. Through my sunglasses, I observed my family boarding. Even from a distance, the dynamics were familiar. My father walked with the confident stride of a man who assumed ownership, though he was merely a client. My mother paused theatrically at the gangway, likely surveying for an audience. Sebastian barked instructions to the dockhand with unnecessary authority. And Juliet? Posing, of course, for what appeared to be Instagram stories, sun hat tilted just so. They were greeted by Bianca and the crew. I watched how my father barely acknowledged the steward who took his bag. My mother immediately launched into what appeared to be instructions, before even fully boarding. Some things never change. After 20 minutes I approached. Dressed in the same carefully chosen outfit, white linen pants, navy silk blouse, understated gold jewelry. I walked with measured confidence down the dock. The marina breeze tugged gently at my sleeves. At the security checkpoint, Thomas, our officer, stepped forward, playing his role perfectly. "Afternoon, ma'am. This is a private vessel. May I help you?" he asked, face neutral, eyes twinkling with recognition. "I'm here to speak with Captain Miller," I said, loud enough for anyone on the lower deck to hear. Before he could respond, I spotted my mother at the upper railing. Her expression shifted. Curiosity to shock to something sharper. She descended quickly, intercepting me at the base of the gangway. "Malene," she hissed through a tight social smile, her eyes cold. "What are you doing here?" I was very clear. This trip is for successful family only. The sting of her words flared briefly, then extinguished by what came next. Captain Miller appeared behind her. "Miss Parker," he said with a respectful nod. "We weren't expecting you until later. Everything is prepared for your inspection." My mother faltered. "You know my daughter?" "Of course," Captain Miller replied smoothly. "Miss Parker is our employer." "There must be some mistake," she said, voice rising. "We chartered this yacht through Maritime Luxury Experiences." I reached into my pocket and drew out my keyring, the master key to Azure Dreams Bridge, engraved with the company's logo. "Well, Mother," I said, my voice steady, "it is my yacht. I believe I'm entitled to be here." Silence. My mother's mouth opened, closed. No words came, a rare moment of speechlessness from Vivian Parker. Behind her, my father arrived. His face moved from annoyance to confusion. "What's happening here?" he barked, looking between me and Captain Miller. "Miss Parker owns Maritime Luxury Experiences," Captain Miller stated professionally. "Azure Dream is the flagship vessel of her fleet." My father's jaw dropped, literally. A cartoon reaction I would have laughed at under different circumstances. Sebastian appeared next, trailed by Juliet and Preston, drawn by the rising tension. Maddie owns this? Juliet blurted, gesturing to the yacht. Not just this yacht, Captain Miller added, clearly savoring the reveal. Miss Parker owns the entire charter company. One of the most successful on the eastern seaboard, I might add. I stepped past my still silent mother onto the deck of my vessel, my shoes touching the teak I had personally chosen during the last renovation. The maritime industry has been good to me, I said, allowing myself a small, understated smile. Captain Miller, I'd like to greet the rest of the crew before we depart. Of course, Miss Parker. They're assembled in the main salon as requested. As I moved toward the interior of the yacht, my family parted before me like the Red Sea. Their expressions told the story. My father's reassessment, Sebastian's disbelief, Juliet's tangled mix of embarrassment and awe. And for the first time in years I didn't shrink. I didn't explain. I simply walked forward, seen finally on my terms. My mother recovered enough to attempt damage control, falling into step beside me. Meline, darling, why didn't you tell us about all this? Of course we would have been proud. The transparent pivot made me pause. I turned to face her directly, aware that the entire family was watching our exchange. Would you have been, Mother? I asked quietly. Because less than 48 hours ago, you told me I wasn't successful enough to join this cruise. I held her gaze. Nothing about me changed between then and now. The only difference is that your definition of success has finally been satisfied. Color rose in her cheeks. That's not fair. We simply didn't understand the scope of your hobby. My company, I corrected, my voice firm, which employs 40 full-time staff and generates annual revenue that would surprise you. I exhaled, steady and clear. And no, I didn't tell you because I wanted to be valued for who I am, not for what I own. Clearly, that was asking too much. Without waiting for her response, I continued into the main salon, where the crew stood at attention. Each member greeted me by name, with the kind of genuine respect I had sought for decades from my family, and never received. Thank you all for preparing Azure Dream to our standards. I addressed them. This charter is unique, given my relationship to the clients, but I expect the same excellence we always provide. You're representing not just me, but everyone at Maritime Luxury. As the crew dispersed to begin their duties, I turned to find my entire family had followed, now standing awkwardly around the salon's perimeter. The power dynamic had visibly shifted. They weren't sure how to act now that I was no longer the family disappointment, but the owner of the very symbol of luxury they had used to exclude me. I've had the Azure Suite prepared for you, I informed them, referring to the yacht's premium stateroom. Unless you'd prefer I take other accommodations during the cruise. My father finally found his voice. You're staying. It is my yacht, I replied simply. And apparently, I'm successful enough to qualify for attendance. That evening, the first dinner aboard Azure Dream was more complex than any business negotiation I had ever led. I chose to arrive last to the dining salon. A deliberate reversal of my usual punctuality, intended to signal something had changed. Something important. When I entered, my family was already seated around the custom mahogany table I'd commissioned from a Maine craftsman the year before. Conversation halted. I took the seat at the head of the table, a position my father had undoubtedly assumed would be his. Chef Marcel had prepared his signature seafood feast. Locally sourced lobster, seasonal vegetables and artisan breads. The irony was not lost on me. This very menu, approved months ago for Azure Dream's welcome dinner, was now being served to the people who believed I couldn't tell the difference between yacht maintenance and yacht ownership. This food is exquisite, my mother offered after several minutes of strained silence. You must be very hands-on with your business, Meline. The olive branch was expected. Vivian Parker's attempt to re-establish control. Civil, smiling, vaguely patronizing. I believe in knowing every aspect of my operation, I replied, lifting my glass of Sancerre, one I'd personally selected from our onboard cellar. From engine specifications to linen thread counts. That explains why everything feels so cohesive, Juliet chimed in, as if making a profound observation. The aesthetic is so you now that I think about it. The aesthetic is intentional luxury with practical functionality, I clarified gently. But yes, I was involved in every design decision. My father, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. How many vessels in your fleet currently? Typical Charles Parker. Assessing the scale to assign proper value in his mental hierarchy. We operate 8 luxury yachts ranging from 60 to 200 feet, I answered. With 2 more under construction in Rhode Island. I watched as he mentally calculated valuation and growth projections. Always had a good head for business, he declared, his voice tinged with approval. Must be the Parker genes. I'd say it was despite the Parker expectations, not because of them, I countered. I wasn't going to let him retroactively claim credit for success he had actively discouraged. Sebastian, who had been sullen since the reveal, decided it was his moment to reassert dominance. 8 vessels is impressive for a boutique operation, he said. Have you considered scaling more aggressively? With proper capital investment and the right strategic partnerships, you could double that in 18 months. It was such a Sebastian comment. Growth above all. No regard for experience or craft. We're expanding at a pace that allows us to maintain our quality standards, I said evenly. Luxury experiences depend on attention to detail, and that doesn't scale easily. Our clients choose us because we're not a mass-market operation. He opened his mouth to argue, but was cut off by our cousin Isla, a recent college graduate invited as Sebastian's guest. She had remained quiet until now. I think what Meline has built is amazing, Isla said, her voice ringing with genuine admiration. Creating something that reflects your personal values while still being commercially successful. That's the dream, isn't it? Her comment, free from the baggage of our immediate family dynamics, momentarily lightened the atmosphere. Thank you, Isla, I said with a smile, grateful for the simplicity and sincerity of her acknowledgement. After dinner, I offered to give a tour of Azure Dream. Normally, I delegated that task to crew members, but under the circumstances, it felt right to do it myself. Leading my family through the vessel, I explained features and design elements with the same pride I showed potential investors. The sun deck was completely redesigned last winter, I said as we reached the top level, with its panoramic views. We expanded the jacuzzi area and added these adjustable loungers. Clients particularly appreciate them. This must have cost a fortune, my mother murmured, running her hand along the custom teak railing. It was a significant investment, I acknowledged, but the client experience justified the expense. My father, ever the businessman, asked pointed questions about operating costs, profit margins, and return on investment. I answered each one directly. As we toured, I watched his skepticism gradually soften into reluctant respect, as he realized the fiscal soundness of the company I had built. The tour ended on the aft deck, where Bianca had prepared after-dinner drinks. As the others dispersed to explore further on their own, my father lingered, gesturing to the empty chair beside him. I hesitated, then joined him at the small table overlooking the marina, still aglow with the last light of sunset. Your mother and I may have underestimated your business acumen, he said, his version of an apology. You underestimated me entirely, I corrected gently but firmly. Not just my business sense, my determination, my vision, my definition of success. He nodded slowly, swirling the scotch in his glass. Perhaps. But you must admit, keeping us in the dark didn't give us the opportunity to revise our assessment. Would it have mattered? I asked. Would knowing I owned a successful company have made you value my happiness more? Or would it have simply shifted me from disappointment to acceptable in the Parker hierarchy? My directness startled him. In our family, emotions and confrontations were typically wrapped in layers of polite deflection. That's rather unfair, Meline. We've always wanted what's best for you. No, I said quietly. You've always wanted what aligned with your vision of what's best for me. There's a profound difference. Before he could respond, Captain Miller approached with a weather report in hand, an unintentional but welcome interruption. Miss Parker, we're tracking a storm system that's strengthened since this morning's forecast, he reported. Nothing dangerous, but we may experience rougher seas than anticipated on the second day. Thank you, Captain, I replied. Please adjust our course for passenger comfort. I trust your judgment. The brief exchange, casual as it was, highlighted something my family couldn't miss. The mutual respect between myself and my crew. It wasn't the obligatory politeness given to wealthy clients. It was real, earned, and rooted in years of collaboration and leadership. Throughout the evening, I observed my family adjusting to the new reality in their own ways. My father sought common ground through business talk. My mother oscillated between pride in my accomplishments and unease at her social hierarchy being overturned. Sebastian clung to competitiveness, asking questions aimed at poking holes in my model. Juliet seemed genuinely curious, but focused mostly on the glamorous parts, not the years of sweat behind them. When I finally retired to my stateroom, I felt emotionally drained, but also strangely liberated. For 7 years, I'd compartmentalized my life, presenting one version of myself to my family, another to the business world. Now those worlds had collided, forcing an integration I had both feared and needed. As Azure Dream gently rocked in the harbor's rhythm, I reviewed the day's events and prepared for what I knew would be a week of continued adjustments and revelations. The forecasted storm seemed a fitting metaphor for what lay ahead, both literally and figuratively. The second night of our cruise brought that storm, and it exceeded even the revised forecast. I was awakened just after midnight by the sharp tone of my satellite phone, used exclusively for operational emergencies. "Miss Parker," came Captain Miller's voice, calm but urgent. "The storm system has intensified significantly. We're experiencing gale-force winds and heavy seas. I've altered course to minimize impact, but I wanted to alert you before waking the other passengers." "Thank you, Captain. I'll be right up," I replied, already reaching for appropriate clothing. By the time I reached the bridge, Azure Dream was pitching noticeably, her state-of-the-art stabilizers working hard against the swell. Through the rain-streaked windows, there was only blackness punctuated by flashes of distant lightning. "Status report," I said, slipping seamlessly into emergency management mode. "Winds at 40 knots, Captain Miller replied, his hand steady on the controls. "Seas 8 to 10 feet and building. All systems are functioning, but passenger comfort will be significantly compromised. We're en route to the sheltered cove we discussed, but it's still 3 hours away at reduced speed." I nodded, reviewing the navigation display and weather radar. "Have any passengers been alerted yet?" "Not by crew," Captain Miller replied. "But the motion will likely wake them soon." As if summoned by his words, the door to the bridge opened. My father stepped in, wearing a hastily donned robe, his usual composure noticeably absent. "What the hell is happening?" he demanded, grabbing the doorframe as the yacht crested a particularly large wave. "We're navigating a stronger-than-expected storm system," I explained calmly. "Captain Miller has altered course toward sheltered waters." Another wave hit, sending a shudder through the vessel. My father's face paled visibly. "Is this normal? Is it safe?" The questions carried something I'd rarely heard in Charles Parker's voice: fear. "Azure Dream is rated for conditions far worse than this," I assured him. "But I understand it could be unsettling if you're not accustomed to it." Before he could respond, more family members began to appear, each in various states of alarm. My mother arrived next, still clutching her silk sleep mask, her perfect composure shattered by the rocking. Sebastian followed, trying to maintain his usual confidence, but visibly flinched with each thunderous wave. Juliet clung to Preston, her earlier Instagram-perfect presence replaced by open terror. "We're all going to die," she whispered dramatically as a bolt of lightning illuminated the churning sea. "No one is dying tonight," I said firmly, my voice carrying the calm authority forged over years in maritime leadership. "This vessel has weathered far worse. Captain Miller is one of the most experienced captains on the East Coast. We have a clear plan for passenger safety." My words had a ripple effect, softening the collective panic. I outlined the situation in simple, steady terms: our adjusted course, the expected TI Meline until we reached calmer waters. In the meantime, I concluded, I suggest everyone return to their staterooms and secure any loose items. The crew will bring anti-nausea medication to anyone who needs it. "I'm not going back down there," my mother declared, her voice rising with each word. "It feels like being in a washing machine." For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I saw Vivian Parker completely undone. Her carefully maintained facade had crumbled, revealing a vulnerability I had never been permitted to witness. "Come with me," I said gently, guiding her to the captain's private quarters adjacent to the bridge. "You can rest here, where the motion is less severe." Inside the small but comfortable room, my mother sank onto the bed, hands trembling slightly. I busied myself finding water and medication, giving her a moment to collect herself. "I never understood why anyone would choose this," she said suddenly. "Living at the mercy of something so unpredictable. It was about more than the storm. It was about my life, my choices." "That's the difference in our perspectives," I replied, handing her the glass. "I don't see it as being at nature's mercy. I see it as learning to work with forces greater than myself, adapting rather than always trying to control. She took a small sip and studied me, as if seeing me clearly for the first time. You're different here. More certain. I'm the same person I've always been, Mother. You're just seeing me in my element, rather than trying to force me into yours. A particularly violent wave made the yacht lurch. She instinctively grabbed my arm. In that moment of unguarded fear, something shifted between us. I've always been so afraid of anything I couldn't control, she admitted softly. My appearance. My social standing. My children's choices. The fear of judgment. Of failure. I know, I said, recognizing the rare moment of honesty. But look where we are now, in the middle of what you'd call a worst-case scenario. And yet, we're going to be fine. Her eyes filled with unexpected tears. When did you become so strong, Malene? When I stopped measuring my worth by your standards, I said gently, and started creating my own. A sudden ring interrupted the moment, the satellite phone again. The storm was intensifying further. Additional safety protocols were needed. I excused myself, promising to return soon, and headed back to the bridge, where the rest of my family had remained, too anxious to return to their cabins. For the next 2 hours, I worked alongside Captain Miller and the crew, adjusting navigation, coordinating updates, ensuring everyone on board remained safe. My leadership was efficient, calm, and decisive. Every action spoke volumes louder than years of family dinners ever could. Sebastian watched from the corner, clearly stunned, as I consulted weather data and adjusted charts with the ease of someone who had truly earned her role. You actually know what you're doing, he said during a brief lull, unable to hide his surprise. The comment was both gratifying and mildly insulting. Did you think I've been playing pretend CEO for 7 years? I asked. He hesitated, rubbing his temple. Honestly? I thought you had people handling the technical stuff while you focused on the hospitality side. I started by doing every job on my first boat myself, I explained. I can tie every knot, operate every system, and navigate through conditions that would make most recreational sailors head for shore. I built this company from the deck up, not from a corner office down. Sebastian's expression shifted, from surprise to something resembling respect. That's actually impressive, Maddie. By dawn, we had navigated through the worst of the storm and reached the protected cove Captain Miller had identified. As Azure Dream's motion eased and the first light of morning lit up the now gentle waters, my exhausted family slowly began to relax. My mother emerged from the captain's quarters, looking surprisingly composed despite the night's upheaval. She approached me as I reviewed minor damage reports with the first mate. I need to speak with you, she said, with uncharacteristic directness. I nodded, finishing my conversation before following her to a quiet corner of the upper deck. The morning air was crisp, salt-tinged, and peaceful, carrying away the last remnants of turbulence. My mother spoke without preamble. Last night changed my perspective. Watching you handle that crisis, it was like seeing a completely different person than the daughter I thought I knew. Or perhaps, I offered gently, you're finally seeing who I've been all along. She nodded slowly. Perhaps I've spent so many years focused on a very narrow definition of success. Prestigious career. Social connections. Financial security. The right address. All external validations, I noted. Yes. Her eyes searched mine. And here you've built something remarkable by rejecting that path entirely. She hesitated, then added. When I sent that text, uninviting you, I genuinely believed I was protecting both you and the family from uncomfortable comparisons. You were protecting yourself from having to explain my alternative career choice, I corrected, gently but clearly. She exhaled. You're right. And I was wrong. Completely wrong. Not just about the text, but about the past 7 years of dismissing your choices. The acknowledgement, so long awaited and now so freely offered, momentarily left me speechless. Into that silence came Isla, who had been watching us from a respectful distance. Malene, I just wanted to say how amazing you were last night, she said, her voice full of admiration. The way you took charge stayed calm. I've never seen anything like it. Thank you, Isla. I've been miserable in my finance internship, she admitted, glancing nervously at my mother. Everyone keeps telling me to stick with it because it's prestigious. But seeing you build something you actually care about, it's inspiring. I'd love to hear more about how you got started. My mother's expression softened. She looked between us. I think that's a wonderful idea, Isla. A pause. Malene's path has certainly proven worthy of consideration. The simple validation, casual to anyone else but monumental between us, brought unexpected emotion to my throat. As the day progressed, the aftermath of the storm created a curious atmosphere aboard Azure Dream. The physical danger had disrupted carefully maintained social hierarchies. In its place, a quiet authenticity emerged. Raw and real, unfamiliar but welcome. My father, still unsettled by his helplessness during the storm, observed my interactions with the crew with an air of contemplation I'd never seen in him. Sebastian, his competitive edge dulled for once, asked genuine questions about my business, without trying to one-up me. Juliet lingered nearby more often than usual, asking about crew routines and the design choices I'd made. She even expressed admiration for the logistical complexity of managing a floating luxury hotel. By afternoon, Azure Dream resumed its course under calm skies. And while our itinerary continued as planned, the experience aboard had already shifted, permanently. My family hadn't just been transformed by the revelation of my success. They had been changed by witnessing me. The me they'd never taken the time to truly see. The storm had stripped away all pretense, forcing a reckoning no polite conversation could have achieved. That evening we gathered for dinner beneath a sky streaked with watercolor hues, sunset washing the deck in soft, golden light. For the first time in years, the atmosphere felt easy, unforced. No tension humming beneath the surface. Stories were shared without scorekeeping. Questions were asked with real curiosity instead of veiled critique. Laughter came freely, light, full, and without competition. And as I looked around the table, something I'd never expected to feel on a Parker family cruise settled over me. Peace. It wasn't perfect, and years of ingrained patterns wouldn't dissolve overnight. But as I looked around the table at my imperfect family, attempting for once to see each other with new eyes, I recognized that sometimes the most powerful storms are those that clear the air, allowing something healthier to grow in their wake. On the final morning of our cruise, I woke early and made my way to the bow of Azure Dream. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the horizon in shades of gold and pink that shimmered on the calm water. After the literal and figurative storms of the past week, the tranquility of that moment felt especially precious. The sound of footsteps on deck broke the stillness. My mother approached, her presence notably softer than usual. She had taken to rising early during our journey, a subtle but clear departure from her usual routine of carefully curating her appearance before emerging in public. "It's beautiful," she said, accepting the cup of coffee I offered. "I can see why you love this life." "It has its moments," I agreed, "though it's not always as picturesque as this." She nodded, and for a while we stood together in comfortable silence. The events of the past week had fundamentally altered our dynamic. We were still learning this new language between us, but it was a start. "I've been thinking about our family traditions," she said finally. The annual cruise was meant to bring us together, but somehow it became another competition, another standard to measure against. "Most things in our family did," I said without rancor. "Yes," she admitted. "Your father and I set that tone." I realize now. Success became so narrowly defined that we couldn't see beyond our own expectations. Her admission, unthinkable a week ago, reflected the quiet but real shift happening within her. Vivian Parker was still a woman who valued appearance and status, but the rigidity of her worldview had begun to soften. "Will you host the family cruise next year?" she asked, surprising me. "On your terms, of course." I paused, hearing both apology and olive branch in her request. "I'd like that," I said. Later that morning, I found myself alone with my father on the upper deck. He had been the slowest to adjust. Decades of measuring worth through traditional success metrics are not easily undone. "I've been reviewing Maritime Luxury's public financial disclosures," he said, eyes on the horizon. "Your growth trajectory is impressive." "Thank you," I replied, unsurprised that he had done his research. "What I find most remarkable," he continued, still not meeting my gaze, "is that you achieved all this without leveraging the Parker name or our connections. You built it entirely on your own merit." Coming from Charles Parker, that constituted high praise indeed. "That was important to me," I said quietly. "I needed to know I could succeed on my own terms." He nodded slowly. "I've spent my entire career believing there was only one path to legitimate success. Watching you this week, it's been educational." "Better late than never," I offered with a small smile. "Indeed." He finally turned to face me. I may not fully understand your choices, Meline, but I respect what you've built, and more importantly, who you've become while building it. His words, though still filtered through a business lens, represented perhaps the most authentic connection we'd shared in my adult life. As Azure Dream approached the harbor on our final afternoon, the family gathered on the main deck. The journey was ending, but the conversations begun during the week had opened doors that had long been closed. Sebastian, whose competitive edge had softened, approached me as we prepared to dock. "So, little sister's been the secret success story all along," he said. The usual edge in his voice was absent. "Success isn't a zero-sum game, Sebastian," I replied. "Your achievements don't diminish mine, and mine don't threaten yours." He considered this perhaps for the first time. "I've always measured myself against others," he admitted. "Dad taught us that, didn't he? Always be the best, the richest, the most prestigious." "He did. But we don't have to continue that tradition." "Maybe not," he said tentatively. "Your company is impressive, Maddie. Different from what I'd build, but impressive nonetheless." From Sebastian, this qualified acknowledgement represented real growth. As we completed docking procedures and prepared to disembark, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me to this moment. 7 years ago, I had walked away from the life my family prescribed, terrified but determined to forge my own path. The road had been anything but easy, marked by painful separations, remarkable triumphs, and quiet resilience. For years, I'd carried the weight of their disapproval, letting it shadow even my proudest achievements. I had kept my success private, hoping that one day, they would value me for who I was rather than for what I produced. That hope had been naive but not entirely misplaced. The revelation of my success had changed how they saw me. It had offered the external validation they understood. But more importantly, this week had given them and me a chance to witness something deeper. The person I had become. A woman of competence, conviction, and character. As we gathered one final time on the aft deck before departure, Isla approached with a hesitant smile. "I've been thinking a lot about our conversations," she said. "About finding work that matters to you. Not just what others expect." She took a breath. "I've decided to explore internships in marine conservation next summer, instead of another finance position." I smiled, deeply moved. "That sounds like a good place to start," I said. "I'm happy to connect you with people who can help." Isla's eyes lit up. "I'd love that." And as the harbor welcomed Azure Dream home, I felt something I hadn't expected after a week like this. Hope. For Isla. For my family. And finally for myself. "That sounds wonderful, Isla. Let me know if I can help connect you with some of my industry contacts." "Really? That would be amazing." Her genuine enthusiasm stood in stark contrast to the measured, filtered responses that had long defined Parker family interactions. It was real, unguarded, and filled with possibility. My mother, overhearing our exchange, joined us, an unreadable expression on her face. "Meline has always followed her own compass," she said. Her tone was surprisingly warm. "Perhaps more of us should consider doing the same." These small moments, subtle recognitions, tentative bridges, were far from perfect. But they marked something important, the beginning of a healing process that had been long overdue. My family might never fully embrace the path I had chosen. But for the first time, I felt seen, not as a disappointment or an outlier, but as myself. The real me. As we prepared to go our separate ways, I understood something with newfound clarity. Success had never truly been about proving my worth to my family. It had always been about discovering my own definition of a life well lived. About building something that aligned with my values, not someone else's expectations. The true measure of success wasn't the yacht beneath my feet or the company I had built. It was the inner peace that came from living authentically. That lesson, hard-won through years of choosing conviction over conformity, was something I would never again compromise. My journey from seeking external validation to standing in internal truth hadn't ended. In many ways, it had only just begun. But as I watched my family board their cars and disappear down the dock, each carrying their own quiet reflections, I felt a sense of liberation no business deal had ever given me. Same time next year, my father asked as he turned to leave. His question carried layers of meaning beyond the words themselves. "Yes," I replied, smiling genuinely. "But next time, everyone gets a proper invitation." Have you ever had to show someone in your life that your definition of success was valid even when it didn't match their expectations? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is stay true to our path, even when others don't understand it. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more experiences about finding your own way. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember, true success is measured by your own happiness, not someone else's yardstick. And that's the thing about revenge, it doesn't always have to be loud or cruel. Sometimes the most powerful response is living well, building something beautiful, and choosing peace over proving a point. If you're carrying the weight of betrayal or injustice, focus on healing. Set boundaries. Grow. Let go with dignity. You deserve that freedom. If this story spoke to you, share your own experience in the comments. Let's create space for healing, not just hurt. Because sometimes rising above is the real revenge. What has rising above looked like in your life?